Let's cross now to Federal Labor Party frontbencher, Agriculture and Resources spokesperson Joel Fitzgibbon, who joins us via Skype from Cessnock, up there in the Hunter Valley. Good to talk to you again, Joel. Are you heading down to Canberra on Wednesday for this parliamentary sitting to look at the wage subsidy scheme primarily?
No, I'm not, Chris. I did attend the last sitting and I've been told it's not absolutely necessary for me to be there. That's a good thing because I have so much going on here in the electorate. People need me here more now than they need me in Canberra. And, of course...
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a moment, but let's stick with Canberra for a moment. Obviously, there's some argy-bargy about some details and suggested changes from Labor, especially to look after some short-term casuals and the like when it comes to this wage subsidy scheme. But surely, whatever happens, Labor's going to pass this bill. We need this scheme in place.
Of course we will, Chris, and that's why it's not necessary for me to go to Canberra. It's a fait accompli, but there are some pretty significant problems with the package, and we will take the opportunity to continue to argue the case for change and possibly even move amendments for change, even though they are more than likely destined for failure. We want to make that point. We support this package. It's a good package. It was always going to be an imperfect package because it's been done in a rush in extraordinary circumstances, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do our best to work with the government to make it a better package.
Yeah, it's interesting. In the news poll today, shows 86% public support for the package, but I agree with you. You can't spend this amount of money in this amount of time and not have some mistakes. And so we've got to accept that, and the government need to listen to Labor and other pressure groups as time goes on, not just before they pass the legislation, but in case any tidy-ups are needed in the future. And just on that, there was the childcare package released last week, and it's been brought to my attention that family childcare, family daycare providers could well have been done over in this, accidentally presumably, where their contributions for government are going to be more than halved, and a lot of them are going to be forced out of business when the whole idea of the package is supposed to be supporting childcare.
And just on your first point, first of all, Chris, it'd be pretty hard to spend $300 billion of taxpayers' money with the support of the opposition and not get a boost in the polls. So good luck to Scott Morrison. But yeah, this rates really highly amongst the issues I'm dealing with in my electorate, probably in order. Obviously, the casuals that are missing out on JOBKEEPER, small business unable to pay their rents, older people not being able to access flu shots, small business with a whole range of problems. But childcare, a really big one. And no, you're not quite right. You're spot on that there are big problems, but the rules, as Scott Morrison has determined them, apply equally to family daycare as they do to the centres. But typically family daycare is going to be more disadvantaged than even the disadvantaged amongst the centres. And that's because the way Scott Morrison has done this is that he's modelled this in an attempt to allow him to claim that parents will pay nothing. And while that's true, that model is going to deliver a great disadvantage to the many centres who didn't have a big collapse, ironically, in the attendance of their children in that March period. So their childcare subsidy is going to collapse, even though they still have high attendance. Why would a centre typically have higher attendance? Well, it might be, as is the case in many towns in my electorate, an area of so low socioeconomic status where parents have had no choice but to continue to keep their kids at school. Now, those centres will receive half of their childcare subsidy, but will no longer get any payment from the parents. So their attendance isn't collapsing, but their revenues are, and they are in serious trouble.
That's exactly right. So the answer here has to be a separate package, doesn't it, for family daycare, childcare facilities?
Well, I'm not pretending it's easy. No matter what you do, there are going to be problems, and that's what we're seeing in a range of initiatives. But the idea of focusing on the capacity to tell parents that childcare will be free has led to these distortions. So there's got to be a better way. Rather than paying half of the childcare subsidy, there's got to be some mixture and some, I suppose, flexibility across a whole range of very, very different childcare methods, but also childcare centres in much demographic areas.
I'll take that up with the childcare operator in a little moment, and we'll also follow up with the Minister. But just more generally, Joel Fitzgibbon, tell us about your role as a local MP. Now, you have a largely regional electorate with some pretty big country towns in it, like Maitland and Cessnock. Are you able to meet people face to face, or are you chatting to people on the phone and Skype? Are you going to the office? Is there a never-ending list of grievances and problems coming your way? What's it like for a local MP?
We are all electorate officers now, Chris. Whether you're a member of my Canberra staff, usually doing portfolio work, or whether you are the local MP, you are now just one of the team. And me and my team spend all day on the phone and much of the night, indeed, talking to stakeholders, usually constituents. Some of us are sitting in Canberra. Half of my staff, my Cessnock staff, are in the office. The other half are at home, and I'm at home. But we're all connected, and we're all doing the same thing. That is, trying to respond adequately to the flood of calls we are receiving on such a large range of issues. Some of them I've already mentioned. And of course, my portfolio work goes on. Now, that's much diminished, but I'm also on the phones to various stakeholders, whether they're in the agriculture sector, dealing with visa issues, for example, or whether they're in the resources sector, dealing with the restrictions affecting fly in, fly out, whether they're an exploration company, which doesn't indeed have revenue, and that's too technical to explain today, but therefore doesn't qualify for the JobKeeper payment on behalf of their employees. So it's a pretty busy time, different sort of work that I'm used to. No travel, no committee meetings, no stakeholder visits, no farm visits, no mining visits, but just as busy, just the same, but doing very different things.
Yeah, and of course, in the Upper Hunter and around there, a bit of rain for a change. There'll be a lot of farmers pretty pleased to see the rain, but of course, such a big tourism industry, and you're telling everyone to stay away. No one's going away to the Hunter for Easter, that's for sure.
Well, our visitor economy is shot, Chris. Our vineyards are doing it tough. Our accommodation is doing it tough. Of course, concerts, we have a very big concert industry here in the Hunter Valley. It is shot. Facilities like Crown Plaza, for example, a big golfing complex, closed on Friday. Their occupancy, as I understand it, was around 7%. They could survive at that rate. So Jerry Schwartz has closed the doors for as long as 6 months, he assesses. So it's really, really bad here.
Well, we've got to start talking about how we can ramp it up again. As I say, we have to wait on the medical advice, but we have to look for innovative ways to start opening businesses again under new rules, if needed, as soon as possible, surely.
Well, I hope so, Chris. I mean, look, we can see in the numbers that social distancing and the other measures the government has rightly taken, like closing our borders, is working, and let us hope and pray that that continues to be the case, because we can't go on like this for 6 months. That's what business people are telling me. And of course, you got that landlord-tenant relationship. Now, most landlords will help where they can, and they are talking to their tenants, whether they be residential or commercial, but they can only do that for so long. And of course, JobKeeper and these other arrangements are only set in concrete, or should be after Wednesday, for 6 months. So, yeah, the point has to be, there has to be a point at which we can continue to return to some form of normality. Otherwise, many of these businesses will be past the point of no return.